The best of downtown from 7 to 8 a.m. on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket and 929theticket.com. This is the best of downtown.
Had a good Sunday morning to you. It is the 21st day of September. Almost fall. Rich Kimball, Brian Stackpole with you in a previously recorded edition of the Best of Downtown. On the program today, we'll talk about the NFL situation with Gregg Doyel of CBS Sports. We'll also preview the Patriots game. Dave D'Onofrio of the New Hampshire Union Leader with us. We'll also get fantasy football talk with Dr. D. Craig Douglas. A little Red Sox, too. Sean McAdam of Comcast Sportsnet New England. And we'll visit the world of entertainment. Trace Beaulieu from the old MST 3000, Mystery Science Theater 3K in Bangor this weekend for the Bang Pop Comic-Con. We had a chance to visit with him as well. But we kick things off on this Sunday morning by talking about the recent state of NFL football. It's been a rough couple of weeks for the league. We talked with Gregg Doyel of CBS Sports and asked him where Roger Goodell is these days.
Well, he screwed this thing up left and right from start to finish. I am not one of those NFL reporters who talk to him regularly or at all, and therefore kind of kiss his butt and go easy on him. He's handled this thing poorly. But he's doing the smart thing by staying the heck out of sight right now. When you are a walking PR disaster, one thing I've learned from just watching it over the years and actually being part of it a few times is that the best thing you can do is disappear for a while. Let other people, handle the business, but just no public statements, no press conferences, because all you're going to do is get beat up and regurgitate how much everybody hates you at the moment. So, it might be gutless for him to be hiding, but from a PR standpoint, it's his best move. I get it.
Now, he's made a lot of money for the owners. They seem pretty united behind them. Is there anything that's happened so far that really would put his job at risk?
The only thing I would say there's a lot of things have happened that should put his job at risk, but as far as what do the owners think, I think the only way he loses his job is that investigation right now into the Ray Rice video. Goodell told us after the video was made public by TMZ last week, and we saw Rice actually punching his fiancée. I mean, we knew he'd done it, but actually seeing it was apparently different because that's what it took to get him finally kicked out. But Goodell's response to that was, A, I didn't see it when I gave him the 2-game suspension, and B, if it was in our property of the NFL offices, I didn't know about it, and I tried to get it. If somehow that investigation proves that he saw it and was lying to us, or didn't try very hard to get it, or even knew that his offices had it and just declined to see it, which means he was also lying to us, either of those things will get him fired, I think. But short of that, he's already survived. He's already made it.
Anheuser-Busch stepped forward this week and said, we're not happy with the way things are going. We've expressed our displeasure. What does that mean in the big picture, if anything?
Well, what it means is it got Adrian Peterson suspended. That's what it means. What it means also is that the NFL cares a lot more about money than it does doing the right thing. And if sometimes the money inspires the NFL to do the right thing, then they'll do the right thing, but not because it's the right thing. They're going to do it because they're afraid of their money being taken away. That's the only reason Adrian Peterson didn't play this weekend, is that somebody with a whole lot of money made it clear they're not happy about it. Oh, wait a minute. You're not happy, Anheuser-Busch? Okay, we'll suspend him now. We'll create something called the Commissioner's List and put him on it, and also Greg Hardy, because Anheuser-Busch has spoken. And good for Anheuser-Busch. Good for them. But, it's ridiculous just utterly ridiculous that the NFL needed, A, for the world to see that video of Ray Rice punching his fiancée before he was kicked out, and B, that the NFL needed Anheuser-Busch to speak up before Adrian Peterson was sat down.
We're talking with Gregg Doyel, CBS Sports. As the beat goes on, the latest, of course, the Jonathan Dwyer situation, and still nothing going on yet out in San Francisco. They've chosen to look at this differently and say, well, he hasn't been charged with anything yet.
Yeah, and it is different. I think the guy ought to be sitting. Ray McDonald shouldn't be playing. The climate right now is one of zero tolerance around the country for domestic violence, as it always should be, but we're now actually really talking about it and focusing on it. Meanwhile, the 49ers are going to play a guy, and it's not just accusations of domestic violence out there, but it was, I believe it was felony level. Felony level is what it reached, A, and B, his fiancée or girlfriend or whoever it was is pregnant. So, yeah, innocent until proven guilty, that's the court of law, and he's not going to jail, and good, because that's the America I want to live in. But also, with kind of horrific Well, that's horrific. Felony-level domestic violence, A, and B, against a woman who's pregnant. You shouldn't be representing the NFL. You shouldn't be representing the 49ers. One or both of them should be saying, look, you can't play because we stand for more than just merely football. But no one's gotten that message in San Francisco yet.
Along with going a couple of days without having somebody arrested, what could the league as a whole do to move past this, at least in the short term?
Make people like me and you and everybody listening think that they actually care about domestic violence and really care to make it stop and care to make players that are guilty of it, suspend them, discipline them so greatly that everybody knows. I mean, it'll still happen because humans make mistakes, and unfortunately humans make awful, violent mistakes. But the NFL, if they can somehow make it clear to us and to all the players that not on our watch are you going to do this, I think at that point they can start to get out a little bit in front of this story, or at least start playing catch up. And by that I mean, if you're convicted of anything involving domestic violence, something along the lines of a conviction is a year minimum, and depending on how violent it is, the NFL has the right to kick you out for good. I mean, that's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, but they're more interested in little Band-Aids every time. We're going to give everybody 2 games, and then Goodell realized, the country doesn't like that, so going forward it'll be 6 games. And then Adrian Peterson misses 1 game, and the Vikings let him come back, and the country doesn't like that until the Vikings realize, oh, yeah, right. And Anheuser-Busch didn't like it, so the Vikings realize, oh, right, we're going to suspend them indefinitely. So right now all they're doing is appeasing. They're just going for appeasement, and that's why no one trusts them right now, because they're not doing it because it's the right thing. They're just trying to get us all to get off their backs, and we're not going away.
As you look at the league, Gregg, are there more bad guys, people who make really bad decisions in the NFL than there are in the general population, or than there are in other sports?
Definitely not in general population. My understanding of the statistics are NFL players are not arrested at all, or domestic violence related crimes. They're not related. They're not arrested at the same rate as the general population. So your odds of being arrested for domestic violence are greater if you don't play in the NFL than if you do. That's my understanding of the stats. So I don't think it's fair to say NFL players as a whole are worse than us as a whole. At the same time, I'm a big believer in to whom much is given, much is expected. I'm a big believer in, when you're way out in front like NFL players are, they've got more money than most of us, more fame, more free time, more everything than the average people, then show some gratitude for that and live like that. Live like that. And so I'm not real impressed that their arrest rate is slightly less than the average person's arrest rate, because the average person has real-life problems that are a whole lot worse than the NFL. We are under a lot more stress than they are.
Is there anything that fans can do, reasonable, responsible fans who look at this and say, I love football, but I can't justify what the National Football League is doing, or in this case, not doing, outside of just boycotting the games? Is there anything they can do that would make a difference?
Well, in mass, they can, and of course that requires a whole lot of, communication and whatnot, but in mass, if every fan, not every, but if a lot of them start emailing their team, or tweeting them or whatever. New England fans tweet that team, and Denver fans tweet that team, and make a stop, make a stop, make a stop. A lot of anyone's voice it's kind of like voting for president. And any one vote doesn't really mean anything, really, but you get 100 million of us together, and that means something. Same thing with this. Any one person doing any one thing, I don't know what kind of impact that'll make, but if millions of us are emailing or tweeting or both the NFL and the teams, it'll get through, but again, that takes a whole lot of effort by a whole lot of people, and I just don't see it happening.
And that was CBS Sports national columnist Gregg Doyel. You can also find his work on CBSSports.com, talking about the NFL, Roger Goodell, and all the abuse that's rocked the NFL and sports world. You're listening to the Best of Downtown here for the 21st day of September 2014. Again, glad to have you alongside us for this early morning edition of the program. Still got a lot more of this show left to go up until 8 a.m. right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket, including after this first break. We'll talk to Mystery Science Theater 3000 creator Trace Beaulieu on the program, and also his appearance later this afternoon at the Bang Pop Festival here in Bangor at the Cross Insurance Center. We'll talk to Trace after the break here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.
Back on the Best of Downtown on your Sunday morning sports radio, 92.9 The Ticket and 92.9theticket.com. Rich Kimball, Brian Stackpole here. You can follow the program on Twitter. Best way to find out who guests on the show are going to be, it's at Downtown Rich K. Facebook as well, Downtown with Rich Kimball. This weekend, the Comic-Con, Bang Pop Comic-Con has been going on at the Cross Insurance Center. They're at it again today from 10 until 5. Lots of great events and terrific guests as well, including one we had a chance to talk to on the program earlier this week. Trace Beaulieu, who was a longtime member of the cast of Mystery Science Theater 3000, Crow T. Robot, the Mad Scientist, many other characters as well. We visited with him and talked about the early days of MST 3000.
It really has. It's more popular than ever, and it did have great legs. The fact that we're talking about it today, 150 years later, is a tribute to how beloved it is.
Well, you were, of course, the operator of Crow T. Robot, my favorite, and then you also played Dr. Clayton Forrester. I have to know, because there were some legal issues for a while, can you talk about the Gizmonic Institute now?
Yes. Having been fully ousted from the Institute, I feel I've just been handed, a lawyer just appeared and handed me a document that says, no, I can't talk about Gizmonic. But we're going to anyway.
I won't mention it again. How much of the show, when you guys first started, how much of it was improvised and what portion was actually scripted?
Well, when we first started the show, it was at a little tiny UHF television station in Minneapolis called KTMA. And I don't know if your listeners remember UHF television, but you had to have a round antenna on the back of your TV set to get it. So it didn't go out very far. But those shows were completely improvised. We were actually seeing the film for the first time when we sat down in the studio. And so it really was as close to being trapped in space as you could get.
And it was, of course, the ultimate fan's dream to be able to sit there and make fun of bad films. And you had some classic bad films that were part of MST 3000. Were there a couple of favorites that you had through the years?
Oh, I'm very fond of the those health films and the
industrials.
Those Encyclopedia Britannica films.
Oh, yeah.
One that always leaps to mind is A Date with Your Family. Those shorts were just amazing little time capsules of what America thought was right and just at those times, and they're just wonderful to go up against. In our, I guess we were rebelling against those films.
We're talking with Trace Beaulieu here on Downtown. He'll be here this weekend, along with Frank Conniff from MST 3000, Bang Pop Comic-Con this weekend. Of course, you've done so many other things, including the whole group, or much of it, getting back together for a live tour, Cinematic Titanic, a chance to travel the country and do what you do live for people. What was that experience like?
Oh, that was a great deal of fun. When we did the television series, we were kind of locked in a building in the middle of one of the suburbs of Minneapolis, and we never got any feedback or actually saw live human beings. So to go out on the road and actually meet the fans was such a treat. And, we really discovered how beloved the show is. Little kids would discover the show and turn their parents onto it. Parents would bring their kids up watching it. And it was such a great experience to get to meet people and go, oh, it's a family show. It's really enjoyed by everyone.
Now, speaking of kids, you're also the author of a book of poetry entitled Silly Rhymes for Belligerent Children. How did that come to pass?
I had been collecting these little poems that I was writing for years, and I met the illustrator of that book, Len Peralta, who is an amazing guy and works very quickly. And I met him at Dragon Con, which is, another convention similar to yours, I would imagine, in Atlanta. And I said, hey, I've got this idea for a book. Would you like to work on it? And he said, sure. And it was just a delightful experience. Len's a great guy, and people have really responded well to the book. So, yeah, thanks for the plug. That's available on Amazon.
Well, absolutely. And also, while folks are out there looking for your work, they ought to go, if they haven't watched it, one of my favorite television series that's still amazing, it only lasted a year, but you were a regular member of the cast of Freaks and Geeks as well.
Yes, I did about 6 episodes of those. Paul Feig, who created the show, called me up and said, hey, I'm doing this little TV show. Do you want to come and hang out and be on it? I said, sure. And it also had Dave Gruber-Allen, who also toured with us with Cinematic Titanic. One of the writers was J. Elvis Weinstein, who is, of course, Josh Weinstein, who was on Mystery Science Theater. So it was kind of a reunion of all our pals.
You also had a little reunion when you put together recently a musical version of Frankenstein.
That's right. I really missed working with Frank Conniff in that comedic partnership that we had on Mystery Science Theater. And I wanted to work with as many of the people as I could gather from the old show. And I live in Minnesota now and have access to all those people. So we put together this kind of goofy musical tribute, kind of a love letter to the fans and to Frank. It's called The Frank, and we do a song in there doing The Frank. So Frank should be at least satisfied that his name got in there.
Well, absolutely. And, of course, you're busy traveling the country at the various conventions. How many of these do you do in the course of a year?
As many as they will let us do. There's so much fun, and I love traveling with Frank. He's a very easygoing guy, and he's one of the most important things on our list of things to do is eat.
Perfect.
So, and meet the fans. We've never been to Maine, so we're looking forward to this weekend, and it should be a lot of fun.
Will Crow make an appearance? Who has Crow these days?
The original Crow is, I think, in a vault somewhere. We made a bunch of them at one point to deliver them to Planet Hollywood. I don't know if you remember that restaurant.
Sure.
And they all got shipped off to some warehouse in Florida, and then were going to get distributed. I never saw them at a restaurant, but there's a lot of them out there. The cool thing is the fans are now making their own puppets. They make their own Servo and their own Crow, and they often bring them to these conventions, which is it's really fun to see.
And that was Mystery Science Theater 3000 creator Trace Beaulieu from earlier in the week on Downtown with Rich Kimball, talking about his appearance at the Bang Pop Festival yesterday, and also be appearing later on today at the Cross Insurance Center in Bangor. You're listening to the Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. When we come back from the break, we'll talk a little New England Patriots football with our good friend Dave D'Onofrio of the New Hampshire Union Leader and Boston.com. We'll check in with Dave after the break here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.
Stretching and yawning here in the early dawn. Like a rubber band man, one might say. It's the Best of Downtown. Previously recorded edition of the program. Don't forget Patriots football, the pregame show this morning at 10. Gary Tangway and Andy Gresh, Bob Sosi, Scott Zolak bring you the play-by-play a little after 1 o'clock this afternoon on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. We talked with Dave D'Onofrio of the New Hampshire Union Leader and Boston.com earlier this week. Before we previewed the Patriots, a look back to last week's win, the 200th in the career of Bill Belichick, and he won that one in classic Belichick fashion.
Yeah, it kind of hit on all the points that have defined his first 199 wins. Those being just the team looked very prepared. They looked like they had responded to the challenge that really they put upon themselves after that Miami performance. It was sort of authored by players who Belichick has drafted high capital in, has invested high draft capital in recently. You're looking at a lot of first-round picks, a lot of second-round picks that made the biggest plays in Sunday's game on the defensive side. So I thought it was just sort of a fitting way for him to reach that milestone. And I think we all knew he was in the class of all-time elite before getting there, but it's always nice to kind of have a number to put next to the feeling.
Well, for everybody who thought the defense might actually lead the way this season, certainly Sunday was an example of that. The 4 interceptions, gave up an average of just 3.6 yards per play, and also did a good job of limiting the touches for Cordero Patterson.
Yeah, I think we saw that for as dangerous as he is with the ball in his hands, he's got a long way to go as far as getting the ball in his hands in the passing game. You look at his targets last year compared to his receptions, not a great percentage. Not a lot of yards, actually, as many as you'd expect for a player with that sort of explosiveness. Obviously, he's a very dangerous kick returner. He's a really good weapon for the Vikings as a runner, if they can get sort of a surprise element going. Patriots, though, were ready for that. They didn't even try to use him in the run. Gostkowski did a good job keeping the ball away from him for the most part on the kick returns. And if you can take him away in sort of those big bursts, he's not a player that's really going to hurt you at this point in his career.
Offensively, Tom Brady was not happy with his performance, 149 yards, 15 of 22 overall. But one of the things that has to concern the team offensively is the fact that they're focusing most of their targets on 2 guys right now. It's all Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, and if you think about it in the sense that Gronkowski is currently playing, a little less than half the snaps, that means, in most situations, if Brady's throwing and Gronk's not on the field, he's looking at Edelman first, second, and maybe even third. I didn't think it was a great sign this weekend that Tompkins wasn't active. Based on the training camp and the preseason games, I thought he was a player that was emerging and maybe gaining some trust from Brady, which is ultimately, I think, what's gonna decide who gets the ball more often. To not see him on the field at all was a troubling sign, I think. To have Amendola sort of a non-factor yet again. Brandon LaFell didn't even get the ball thrown to him. It's a question of who's going to step up and earn Brady's trust. And for the second consecutive year at the start of the season, that's a serious question.
Yeah, and what is it, especially with Amendola? Is it the injury? Why has he become the forgotten man of this team?
It's strange because you think back to that first game last year in Buffalo, his first game with the team. He and Shane Vereen basically won them that game on the final drive. He tore his groin or whatever happened to him on that series and missed some action, certainly lost some explosiveness. But he came back later in the year and he had a 10-catch game, and it looked like he was starting to round back into shape. And then sort of as the playoffs approached and in the playoffs, really became a non-factor again. And it looks like this year, as he sort of picked up right where he left off. And by everything I know and all I've heard, he's healthy. So it's not a good indication of sort of where his relationship is with Brady. I can't explain it. He was a guy when they signed him as the replacement for Wes Welker. I thought it was going to be, trading one for the other based on what we saw from Amendola in St. Louis. It obviously hasn't been that way, at least on the practice field, because I think that's where you build Brady's trust, and it's where Edelman has really stepped over, everyone else.
We're talking Patriots with Dave D'Onofrio here on Downtown. Yeah, you mentioned trust. Did Stephen Ridley's performance encourage the coaching staff to have a little bit more trust and faith in his abilities?
I would think so. I think it's how they use their running backs. I think is going to depend on what the scheme is and what the opponent presents. They were looking for someone who could hit the hole hard, run straight up the field, north to south style or runner on Sunday, and that's what Ridley does best. He's a guy who's going to run hard at every play. Sometimes to his detriment when he tries to extend plays. That's usually when he fumbles or when he's trying to, initiate contact rather than protect the ball. That will come back and bite him, I'm sure, again, unless he's figured out a way to solve this. But if they're looking for a guy who's going to do that, if that's the focus of the running game and the game plan, I think Ridley's going to be the guy. If they're looking for someone who is a little better in pass protection, can maybe catch the ball out of the backfield, can get wide, can do a little bit more, in space, I think then Vereen will get the majority of the snaps. But I think at this point, until I think he's one fumble away from from losing that trust, and he's walking a thin line there. But until that point, I think they're going to use him and see what they can get.
Home opener this weekend. Do the Raiders come to town? Do they bring anything that ought to concern Patriot fans?
No, honestly. They've been brutal the first 2 weeks. And you could look at it as a situation where they do have some veterans, and if they're going to make anything in the season, this is going to be sort of a big moment for them. If they come east, which they do not historically do well, they can come to Foxborough, which is a tough place to win, and they can get themselves their first win of the year. That could be the win that kind of sets them on a different course than they're headed right now. That's sort of how they have to be looking at this weekend. They have to take that mentality coming in here, and maybe, who knows, that might give them some additional motivation. It might spark something. But if you're just looking at it from a talent perspective and what the first 2 weeks have shown us, the Patriots should win this game by at least 2 touchdowns.
And that was Dave D'Onofrio of the New Hampshire Union Leader and Boston.com talking a little New England Patriots football with us in advance of their game against the Oakland Raiders later this afternoon. Of course, you can hear all the coverage right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket starting at 10 a.m., just a couple short hours from right now, where we'll have, again, New England Patriots pregame coverage, the game, and the kickoff at 1 p.m. for the home opener. And then 3 hours after the game, you'll have all the postgame coverage you could ever want right here, Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket and the Patriots Radio Network. We'll take another break on the program. When we come back, we'll switch gears and talk a little Red Sox baseball as they have the final week of the season coming up starting on Monday. And we'll talk with Sean McAdam of Comcast Sportsnet New England about the Red Sox and their future plans moving forward. This is the Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9.
Have you heard? If you're in the game.
Best of Downtown on your Sunday morning.
Well, it's 8 o'clock in Boise, Alamo.
My name, you ask, Rich Kimball, Brian Stackpole here as well. A lot of emphasis on football as the Red Sox wind down this disappointing season, but much optimism for the coming year. And really, that's the name of the game here over these last couple of weeks, is to see what guys put themselves in position to do, what role they might play in the future with the Red Sox. And to get some insight into that, we spoke earlier this week with Sean McAdam of Comcast Sportsnet New England and started the conversation by asking about Mookie Betts and what his future might be with the ball club.
Well, I don't think there's any question about that unless he gets put in some sort of deal over the winter to help the Red Sox either get one more big bat or to address their starting rotation, which clearly needs to be addressed. Betts has been very impressive in a way that some of the other young position player prospects have not been this season, and in fact have led somewhat to the downfall of the club in 2014. And for that reason, I guess, we're a little reluctant to overstate what it is that Mookie Betts has proven. But certainly through the last approximately 2 months, he's done everything that has been asked of him. He's shown good bat speed. He's shown good speed, period. He has shown the ability to adjust to the outfield, having moved from second base to the outfield earlier in the minor league season. And now we'll see how well he handles second base the rest of the way, because it looks like that's where he's going to get the majority of playing time. But, to the degree that you can, as I said, make any determination based on the last 7 weeks of a season in which there wasn't a whole lot to play for, then Betts has opened some eyes, I think, with his play.
A couple of the biggest disappointments of the year have been, obviously, Will Middlebrooks and Jackie Bradley Jr. Do they both still have a future with this team?
Well, they may still have an opportunity to prove they have a future, I guess is probably the best way to look at it. They have hardly done anything this season to enhance their status beyond Bradley's superb defensive play. And let's face it, that was beyond reproach when he was playing more regularly. His work in center field was Gold Glove caliber and Gold Glove worthy. Whether he gets one or not remains to be seen. But at the same time, here he is struggling to stay over 200 again. Going down to Pawtucket didn't help anything, in the short term anyway. He struggled down there, and he has struggled since he came back up. So I think all Bradley has done is shown that he is a more than capable defender in center field and could be of help being a fourth or fifth outfielder or someone that you bring off the bench as a defensive replacement. As for Middlebrooks, he hasn't done anything either. He's under 200 since coming up around the trade deadline. He's gotten 120 or so plate appearances, does not have a home run, has only 6 extra base hits, all doubles, striking out a lot, hitting under 200. That's been a huge disappointment because I think they had hoped that with him finally healthy, he would show some of that raw right-handed power that he flashed back in 2012 when he hit 15 home runs in half the season, and he could lay claim to the third base spot going into spring training. But he has not done that in the least, and you'd have to think that his future with the organization right now is somewhat up in the air. I know that you keep hearing from people in the organization saying that they don't want to give up on him because power is the hardest thing to find in the game, and he has shown the ability to drive the ball at least at times, and you don't want to have that give up on that guy too soon. But how many more chances or how much more playing time can he expect? So if he's going to be part of the organization in 2015, it will be because he showed something in spring training or early in the season in the minor leagues to warrant another look.
We're talking Red Sox here with Sean McAdam, Comcast Sportsnet, CSNNE.com. One of the few bright spots of late has been the pitching of Clay Buchholz. Is he back to where he was early last season? And is there some reason to believe that he could go back to being, well, maybe not go back, but become a consistently effective starter for the Red Sox down the road?
Well, Rich, you just hit the key word, and that's consistent. And I'm not sure that based on what we've seen of Clay Buchholz over 5 or 6 seasons, that he's ever going to be consistent, and that's a huge problem when you're a major league starter taking the ball every 5 days. The funny thing is that in the past, what has sort of given him difficulty is staying healthy. He's been unable to do that because of some shoulder issues or neck or back or all kinds of things. It seems like it was always something, one thing or another with Buchholz, to the degree that he had never thrown 200 innings and never made 30 starts. And this year, he's been pretty much injury-free other than here or there, and he's still not going to get the 30 starts, and he's still not going to get to 200 innings. And even healthy, he has been inconsistent. So I guess all you can take out of what we've seen from Buchholz over the last 2 months is that it was a hell of a lot better than what we saw in the first 4 months, and gives him at least a better feeling confidence-wise going into the off season, but very little more than that. And when you're looking at Clay Buchholz as your most experienced major league starter heading into the off season, that is a reminder of exactly how much work the front office has to do.
Well, we've had open auditions with all the young guys, Workman, De La Rosa, Renato, Matt Barnes. Do you see any of them being in the starting rotation next spring?
Yeah, I would think that one of them, and I'm not sure who that would be, will win a spot based on what they did somewhat this year and more to the point, spring training next year. I think you look at that rotation and figure that Buchholz and Kelly are 2 starters that will be in the rotation next year, and you kind of slot them in at 3 and 4, and then figure that the Red Sox need to sign one starting pitcher as a free agent and go after another in a trade and acquire 2 starters that are more dependable than Clay Buchholz, then that leaves the number 5 spot open for competition, and whether that's Webster or Workman or De La Rosa or Renato or Barnes or even Stephen Wright might be in the mix. I don't think you want to go into opening day next year with a rotation that has more than one unproven starter, and all 5 of those guys to various degrees. Obviously, De La Rosa has had flashes this year but is not finishing well. Workman pitched well a year ago, but seems to be running on fumes now. Barnes has only had 1 or 2 outings, and it's difficult to judge. Renato had 3 or 4 decent ones, but has been trending in the wrong direction lately. Webster just seems to be very inconsistent, so I'd be surprised if more than one of those made the rotation next April.
And that was Sean McAdam of Comcast Sportsnet New England talking about the Boston Red Sox and their last week of the 2014 season. Again, bright things ahead for the Red Sox, but we're going to have to wait until the offseason to see how this new edition, the 2015 version of the Red Sox, will be, which is hopefully much better than the 2014 edition. This is the Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Glad to have you alongside us once again for this early morning edition of the program. We'll take another break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more New England Patriots football. We'll do so with Rich Hill of SB Nation and PatsPulpit.com. We'll check in with Rich after the break here on Sports Radio 92.9. And we're back on the Best of Downtown with another earlier morning edition from the Best of Downtown with Rich Kimball from the week that was. New England Patriots football right here on the Ticket coming up at 10 a.m. just a couple hours from now for the pregame coverage with Andy Gresh and Gary Tangway. Then the kickoff with Zoe and Bob Sosi. Again, home opener for the New England Patriots, trying to improve their record to 2-1 on the season should they win. Well, speaking of the New England Patriots, on Friday we were able to talk with Rich Hill of SB Nation on this matchup between the Oakland Raiders and the New England Patriots coming up later this afternoon.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, they're going into this game as about 15-point favorites right now, so everyone's kind of expecting them to win in a blowout. And I know that I just looked through the numbers, and every time that the Belichick Patriots have been favored by over 15 points, they've won every single game. So while I don't think they can go in there and just sleep at the wheel, I think that this is a perfect game for them early on in the year to kind of work out all their issues and kind of shake off all the rust that they've had over the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't really want to go back to the Miami game, and I certainly am happy with the win last week, although, again, it's important sometimes to get teams at the right time, and I think with everything that happened with Adrian Peterson, and I'm not sure how the Vikings, how good they are anyway, I mean, would you agree we kind of got the Vikings at the right time?
Oh, no, absolutely, and I kind of feel like that's how our opening schedule was. We've been missing a lot of the starting running backs. We're facing the Raiders right now without Maurice Jones-Drew, who I guess technically is the leader of their running back committee. And I know last week Matt Astiana is not a real replacement for Adrian Peterson on the field. I feel like the Patriots could really just step back and key into Matt Castle.
Well, let's focus on this week a little bit. Let's talk about the Pats and on them. All right, so let's stay. In fact, we'll stay with the running game here because I came on the show a couple weeks ago and I was talking with Rich, our regular host here, that I'm a little worried about Tom Brady and the Patriots offense. I'm not panicking, and I don't think Brady should retire. Nothing dramatic. But I think that teams can figure out this over-the-middle stuff, and we've seen issues. They don't really have that wide receiver to stretch the field that they like. And anyways, it brings me back to the importance of the running game, which it seems like this week, as we really try to sort this out, and I know Ridley had a good game last week, it seems like this could be a week where we see a whole lot of running from the Patriots.
Oh, no, I totally agree, and I feel like last week we saw a little bit of what their game plan was, because we have all this turnover on their offensive line, and Brady's been getting battered around. I know that in the first week against the Dolphins, I think he got hit on average like every other play. I think when they went to the Vikings, they wanted to change up their plan a little bit. They wanted to show a little hard-nosed football, so they just started to run it up the gut to give Brady maybe a little bit more time when he was back there. I definitely see them trying the same approach against the Raiders, because I know that the Raiders don't have that great of a running offense. But I guess we have to kind of hope that they see more of that against the Raiders, although I do think it would be an ideal situation for Brady to kind of work out all of his issues with his wide receiving targets in this game.
Well, let's talk about them a little bit. By the way, it's Rich Hill on the line with us here from PatsPulpit.com. Pretty cool website. In fact, I was reading a bunch of stuff on there today. Tompkins played week 1, didn't last week. Dobson I guess, is he hurt a little? Is he banged up? That's his deal, right?
Yeah, he's recovering from a foot injury, so they're kind of just easing him back.
Right. So where are those guys? I mean, we saw glimpses of brilliance, I think, from both of them last year. Is either one of them at a place this year where they might really step forward and, I don't know if they have a breakout season, but at least start looking like they might be able to?
Well, you kind of have to hope so with Dobson. I know that he's their second-round pick last year. He kind of looked like he was coming on strong in the middle of last year before he hurt his foot, and then he had to get surgery on it in the offseason. So I feel like if he had continued on that trajectory, there'd be no question that he's a starting caliber guy. But I feel like they've really missed him this offseason because he's been recovering from his foot surgery back in March. And just the recovery process has been long and grueling. He didn't really get back to practice until the last week of the preseason. So they're still definitely easing him back in. He's missed a lot of time. He has a lot of catching up to do. And then with Kenbrell Tompkins, the question just has to be, why didn't they play him last week?
Right.
He was targeted 10 times in week 1, which was second most on the team. And then he just disappears in the second week. So you just have to wonder what happened there. What do they view with him? And in my opinion, I kind of feel like Tompkins is what he will be, in a sense, where, like Dobson, he has an upward trajectory where he can still work on, but I feel like the team thinks what they've seen with Tompkins is what they're going to get.
Yeah, I think you might be right. How about Rob Gronkowski? He's obviously, I think he's progressing quite well, at least it would appear. Granted, I'm not at Foxborough, but from what I see on TV, he's, seems like maybe he's coming along as well as we could hope.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been getting the same separation, but I feel like anyone who was expecting Gronk to be Gronk in week 1, they really weren't having realistic expectations. He's still a great threat in the red zone. He's a huge target. He can catch everything. He has big, sticky hands. But I think the issue comes in between the 20s, the middle of the field, where he's not getting the same separation. He doesn't have the same wiggle. And he'll hopefully get that back in a couple weeks. But, this is just all part of the recovery process for him. I think the big concern with him is that the big sleeve that he wears, that I guess kind of protects his forearm and everything like that. It kind of looks like it limits his mobility, his ability, his range as a receiver.
And that was Rich Hill of SB Nation and PatsPulpit.com talking with us about the New England Patriots-Oakland Raiders matchup coming up later this afternoon. One final break on the Best of Downtown. When we come back, we'll wrap up this edition of the show and also preview what's to come on Monday's edition of Downtown with Rich Kimball, which you can hear, of course, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. We'll be right back with a little bit more of the Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.
Time to wrap it up for a Sunday morning Best of Downtown. We thank you, as always, for being with us this morning. And thanks to all our guests, Craig Douglas, fantasy football guru, Gregg Doyel of CBS Sports, Sean McAdam of Comcast Sportsnet New England, also Dave D'Onofrio, New Hampshire Union leader, and Trace Beaulieu of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Check them out today, 10 to 5 at Bang Pop Comic-Con at the Cross Insurance Center in Bangor. Don't forget Patriots football. The pregame show starts just a couple of hours, 10 o'clock this morning here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Don't forget Dale Duff and Clem Labrie on the morning pitch tomorrow at 6 a.m. And then we're joining you live at 4 o'clock tomorrow as we wrap up the weekend's football activities, post-game on the Patriots, Maine football as well with Coach Jack Cosgrove. We'll have the latest FCS poll from the Sports Network, movie reviews from Alan Adams of the Main Edge, and much more. We sure hope you'll join us tomorrow afternoon for Downtown on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you then.
The lights are much brighter there. You can't forget all your troubles, forget all your cares, so go downtown. Things will be great when you're downtown. No finer place for sure. Downtown, everything's waiting for you. Downtown. Don't hang around and let your problems surround.